Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Liberty Talk FM.
Welcome to Living in Solution with Dr. Elaina George. Today we're going to speak about a topic that most of us probably have never heard of. And I have been familiarized with it, but I want to learn more. We're in an age now with the coronavirus where it's all about medication and pharmaceuticals and, unfortunately, vaccines in the conversation as well. But there was something mentioned during one of the press conferences that the president mentioned, something about color therapy and light therapy. And, you know, we're all cells. Our cells are batteries, they're energy producing segments or modules. And there's a lot of ways to heal. And I want to discuss a modality of color therapy, which is something not new. I think it's been around for quite a while. And I wanted to have someone who can talk to this with experience and knowledge. And I wanted to welcome Mr. Darius Dinshah to the show today. He is...
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, sir. I know that you have a history that precedes most of us who just know about drugs. And I wanted to have you on to speak to your knowledge and so that we can learn that there's something it's always beneficial to think outside the box. So first, how did you come to finding color therapy as a modality to help treat people?
Born to it. My father was into it. He was a medical doctor, a practitioner in India, where he was born.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere along the line in his practice came upon a dying lady of mucus colitis. And he was an eclectic practitioner. He was willing to try anything depending on what he felt was necessary at that time for that person. And he had read Dr. Edwin Babbitt's book, Principles of Light and Color. That doctor had a practice in New York City in the later 1800s. And it met, as may be expected, with something that's relatively new to so many people, with great opposition. Nonetheless, color therapy has survived with the same difficulties that Dr. Babbitt faced. My father faced also. Nonetheless, I was born in 1927, and when appropriate age came, I started helping in the manufacture of the lamps that my father used. They were boxes with a bulb in it, a fan for cooling, and the color slides. And when he passed on in 1966, I became president of his corporation. However, in that intervening time from when he started till his passing 46 years later, the general public was, like you, open-minded and thought it would be nice to have something that you could do at home, although at the beginning it was generally practiced by what you might expect practitioners. So the most thoroughly investigative procedure was carried on by a woman doctor, Dr. Kate Baldwin, in a hospital which is now defunct, of course, long absorbed, Women's Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She started with some trepidation, using it on very simple cases at first, like a cold or whatnot, and slowly graduated into more serious things. This continued for about 3 years until the AMA got wind of it and published a scathing article, which is still available online, incidentally, 1924, calling my doctor my father all kinds of names and not investigating what Dr. Baldwin was doing, and it made the interns and whatnot of the hospital nervous, and eventually they eased her out. You might say, in a weird manner, she was still allowed to practice the color therapy in the hospital, but not as part of the staff. So this continued for years until she died. That's about 1937 she died. 1931, a gentleman named Houseman Hughes in New York complained that the machine did not have any real value, even though that the course my father was teaching at the time, which he attended, he slept through. Some of it, most of it, all of it, I don't know. Anyway, Dr. Baldwin testified at that trial. Two other doctors, Dr. Wellcome Hayner and another lady physician, all testified to the results they had achieved with color therapy. My father's particular brand called Spectro-Chrome, more or less meaning colors the spectrum and more, because the spectrum goes from red through orange, yellow, green, all the way to violet, both ends of the visible, what our eye can perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Spectro-Chrome uses all these colors, 9 of them, red, orange, yellow, lemon, green, turquoise, blue, indigo, violet, and then by combining colors, my father generated 3 colors which do not normally appear in nature: purple, magenta, and scarlet. Now, Dr. Babbitt had theorized about some of this, but it never occurred to him how to generate those colors. My father succeeded, and they have proven to be of incredible value in circulatory and emotional problems. So that case was won handily. The judge charged the jury that if this is in any way valuable, even though there may be puffery in the advertising, if it's useful, you must acquit. They did. He was acquitted. 1945, FDA brought a lawsuit that this was totally worthless. 1947, another one. Those without the doctors now available, Dr. Baldwin had died, others had died, and with the fear of the AMA, it became virtually a lay organization. But it's so simple. With the 12 colors, there are 78 attributes to 12 colors, what each color hopefully can do if the body has those abilities still there. The surgery has intervened, organs have been removed, things cannot work the way they would or should. So those 2 cases were lost, resulting eventually in 1948, my father was ordered to surrender all his writings, excepting samples that he may have kept for his own library, for destruction in the Camden, New Jersey incinerator. Hundreds and hundreds of books, thousands of dollars worth, were carted away and burned. So he was placed on probation for 5 years, and after that he resumed until FDA got wind of it again. And even though he put on the front of the machine a placard about 4 by 11 inches with all the details that this has been adjudged useless, you take it on your own responsibility, and so on and so on. The same as all the drugs do nowadays on TV. They tell you all the nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, in his own view, enough that you are warned, try it, okay, if it works, fine, if not, go back to your way you want. A few months later, FDA gets wind of this, or a few years rather, about 3 years. Take him again before a judge. The judge agreed with the prosecutor that this has been already decided, res adjudicata, and put a permanent injunction against any of these kind of devices being shipped in interstate commerce. That lasted until my father died, another 12, 14, 16 years. I took it over and I continued the way he had been. I changed the device a good deal, made it simpler, smaller, more efficient, you might say. However, the size of the machine, the bulbs, the illumination, this does not really seem to be germane to the issue. First person father saved in India, he used a kerosene lantern with the appropriate color of indigo in that case. Also, there's a way of shining it on fluids, and you drink the fluids, they become energized. It's not quite the same as taking the direct illumination on you. But nonetheless, he was well aware that this has tremendous value no matter how it is used. So He was then barred from sending the machines out. He died. I continued with the smaller lamp, much more efficient as far as electrical consumption. But for the 10 years that I continued with his institute, we could only sell the machines in the state of New Jersey. And even at that, the FDA has a control if parts are made outside the state. So it seemed obvious this was not going to get anywhere in the long run. So I dissolved his institute, formed my own Dinshah Health Society in 1976, and it has progressed from there. And through the years from then till now, we've had about 21,000 people who have become aware of this. Some may have used it, some may have not used it, just been curious, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it perseveres, and as of April 23, 2020, we celebrated the 100th birthday, 100 years before my father had delivered the first lecture on Spectro-Chrome in New York City. So it must have value, because second and third generation people, my father used it, my grandfather used it, and they are still using it. The children use it. So it must have value. It is nonsense to say that these energies have no value whatever, which is what the FDA claimed then. Well, they have changed their mind, but the injunction still stands against my father's name, his institute, that it's quackery. If you mail a letter to Spectro-Chrome Institute, Malaga, New Jersey, if the postmaster is on his toes, it should be returned to you with a rubber stamp. Fraudulent, mailed to this address, returned by order of Postmaster General. So, short-sightedness still prevails. But I still make, even at my age, rather than sitting on the porch and, hey, you kids, get off the lawn, I'll sick my dog on you. That kind of thing for my age would be appropriate, I suppose. But I don't. I welcome as much time as I can spent doing this. At the moment, things, of course, got very slow because of the pandemic, but we're ready when it does come. And there are callers. One lady has said she thinks she cured herself. She's waiting to get a test to see whether indeed she has the antibodies. Maybe she didn't.
Let me stop you there, because I want to.
Okay.
We got a great baseline of the history. Now I want to talk about the therapeutic side of that. So let's think about that, and you're listening to Living in Solution.
This is Dr. George. Each week I speak about our healthcare system and the problems with it. One of the main problems is the doctor-patient relationship. I've found that patients really crave time, the time to ask their doctor questions, and physicians crave the time to answer those questions in a thorough manner. Towards that end, Peachtree Ear, Nose, and Throat Center is pleased to announce a new video telemedicine service. We now offer consultation for second opinions and for people who'd like to learn more and ask questions about how to navigate the healthcare system in a cost-effective and efficient manner. Go to peachtreeentcenter.video-visits.com to learn more.
Are you having problems with persistent bad breath, constant throat clearing, hoarseness, a cough that won't go away, a sore throat, or a feeling that something's always stuck in your throat? Why not find out what the problem is so it can be fixed? At Peachtree ENT Center, we believe in taking time to work with our patients as a team to get to the root of the problem. Make an appointment today to see why Peachtree ENT Center is where patient care counts. Call 404-591-9100 or visit us at peachtreeentcenter.com. Welcome back to Living the Solution. With Dr. Elaina George, we're speaking with Mr. Darius Dinshah, and you should go to his website, dinshahhealth.org, and there you can find books that he's written and more information about how to open your mind and see if this is something that's right for you. This should always be about choice, and I don't believe there's one way to treat everybody. And yet, at the beginning of the show, I talked about how each cell has an energy, and it's basically a battery. And I know from science in high school and college that light is energy, right? So when you're talking about red and green, violet, etc., they all have a wavelength and an energy in them that's intrinsic to them. Is that a way to see it?
Indeed it is. And with modern science, the technologies at hand, some of this can be proven visually. In Japan, more than once they've done an experiment. They had a young man on a stool with his shirt off. He was bare from the waist up. The room was totally sealed, not one speck of light, no crack under the door or anything like that. And with a high-tech camera that multiplies photons that hit it, they made his image visible. You could see him totally bathed in his own light. Mm. So we are actually an electrochemical machine, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, we feel that every cell in your body has a specific function to perform. And in so doing, radiates energy, but as you mentioned, different color, different frequency for different organs. So when an organ is underperforming, we have a color, one of these 78 that I mentioned for the 12 colors, which will help that organ regain its usefulness, its effectiveness, which again is why if an organ is removed, Spectro-Chrome will not act. Then you may well have to use drugs.
So it doesn't prohibit or preclude other modalities, essentially. And that's the interesting thing about it. If it doesn't work, then you can try a standard treatment. But I
believe this should be our number one, though. Try this first.
No, I totally agree with you, because you just described when you do something, you intervene and you remove things and use chemicals to alter the function, then it won't work. Because I've always said this, I think the body's self-healing if you get out of the way. And
oh, that's beautiful.
And it's all about balance, right? So
yes.
Let's talk about the most natural thing, right? Sunlight. How much does that play a role, in your opinion, in health?
It would be an immense value if you lived in an area where you could be out in the sun more.
And that's
without clothes.
Without
or
clothes.
Minimal
with minimal clothes?
Yes.
So from the sunlight, and again, you're an expert on this, and I don't want to mess this up, but sunlight, does that incorporate all these different wavelengths?
It does indeed. From infrared, red to violet, and ultraviolet. Now, people are so feared of the ultraviolet causing cancer, and may it well, when overdone with the lifestyle we lead, such poor diet. It is so, we are overnourished and underfed. Back to your pardon. We are overfed and undernourished. It's back.
That's amazing. I mean, going back to the basics in so many ways seems to be the way to go. We've gone so far towards artificial intelligence and science being the only, man-made science, I should say, where it's all about intervention and making it better and doing some sort of cyber version of something. When in actuality, from what you're describing, going to bed, eating properly, getting exercise and sun is probably the most medicinal thing that we could do for ourselves.
Absolutely right.
Why create the wheel, right?
Dr. Baldwin, in one of her, I guess it was a lecture to some of her colleagues, she said, we look so much to the difficult and so little to the easy. Words to that effect.
Oh, that's a mouthful, actually. And I know that must have treated thousands of people at this point, but before the break, you were talking about somebody who it sounds like she was diagnosed with the coronavirus and used this light color therapy.
She wasn't diagnosed. She thinks it's on her own that it was.
Okay, got you. She had the symptoms.
Until she gets the test, we won't know.
Got you. And so what is there? Well, obviously there is definitely different colors for whatever ails you, right? So if you have an upper respiratory infection versus cancer versus, I don't know, liver disease, diabetes, they're all different organs.
It all goes back to the matching the color to the problem. And that each organ, each cell has its own duty to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, we believe that the red, first color, is what energizes the liver. The digestive system is energized by orange, yellow, lemon, those colors.
Mm-hmm.
The pituitary is governing, that's green, the center of the rainbow, and so on. Each part of the spectrum has a specific thing to do. So if you had your clothes off and were in the sun, each part of your body would be utilizing, absorbing, and being strengthened by the particular frequency that that part of the body needs.
Mm-hmm. Makes perfect sense. I mean, it's all about resonance. It's about vibration, sounds like. I mean, it gets converted into, to vibration, right? And either it's harmonic or not.
You might say that each part of your body has a lock, and each color is the key. So red only works on that part of the body that has the lock that fits that key.
Mm-hmm.
And every color has a use.
So when you treat somebody and they're coming in with a particular ailment, how do you titrate it? How do you know how long you need to treat somebody? How do you know when it's balanced again?
They will tell you. You're your best judge.
Mm-hmm.
We have had people that have had to donate for years. For instance, there was ES in Milwaukee. Her mother had a stroke. And she said her mother told her, the daughter, that she could feel some changes when she first started, but it took 2 years before she totally recovered from the stroke. The body takes a long time to fix things sometimes. So you have to give nature a chance, depending on what it is. If you had a cold, of course, or something like that, you'd expect it to be fixed in a week or so.
So would this technically be something you can use for prevention? So you have, let's say, a family history of something. Instead of waiting for yourself to get sick, if you were to use this as a preventative modality, would that be appropriate?
Yes, your body should be able to strengthen. For instance, my mother's side, maternal grandparents both died in their 40s of heart problems. Where do you think that leaves me wondering?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I have heart problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have had arrhythmia in later years, probably the last 10 years, maybe 3-4 times, but I found the colors in a day or so, fixed it.
That's pretty impressive.
Whether I could strengthen my heart by continuing, I'm not sure.
It certainly sounds like a more holistic approach than taking medicines that make the chemistry go all haywire, and you have to recover from a side effect of something else.
Sure. This is actually fixing problems, whereas when you take drugs, what you see, the latest ones on TV in my area anyhow, tar dive dyskinesia.
Right.
Yeah. It's a loss of control of your muscles. Dyskinesia meaning motion without purpose. And I looked it up in the Merck manual of 14 years ago, 2006 version. And it talks of tardive dyskinesia being caused by these psychogenic drugs, the ones that people take for depression and such, and they may take them for a lifetime. And the Merck manual says typically about 5% of those taking these drugs will develop TD, tardive dyskinesia. So if you take it for 10 years, you have a 50-50 chance you'll be struck with dyskinesia. However, the ad on TV goes on to say that's not a problem because now we have drugs to control it.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Not get rid of it, just control it. And then, of course, in my mind, those drugs will have a side effect. What did you have? More drugs to fix those problems.
Mm-hmm. It's like chasing your tail, essentially.
It's a domino. Once you tip one domino, there's no end to it.
Agreed. And we're up against a hard break, so we're going to take our second break and come back. You're living in the solution. Welcome back to Living Solution. We're speaking with Mr. Darius Dinshah, and I think we're getting an excellent lesson on what health really means. And again, just to pound home a point, we are our best doctors. You know, you mentioned it before that people know their bodies better than anybody else. And there's some work that has to be done. You can't expect to treat it poorly, not eat well, have a negative attitude towards whatever, live in stress and fear, and expect your body to be healthy. And I can imagine from a biological standpoint, a cellular standpoint, when you're in that stress mode, when you're in that negative mindset, is it fair enough to say that the cells also, from a cellular level, are affected and their balance is lost and energy is sapped, and then you lose protection and your immune system takes a crash, and then you're more set up for the cells to go rogue, to stop working or cause disease. Is that a way people can think about it in a more holistic way?
Without a doubt. The stress hormones are well known to doctors. The average person may not realize how much damage is caused by stress.
From a light and color therapy standpoint, now, psychiatry is one thing, or therapy where you're going to talk it out. But let's say you're not really amenable to that. Can you use light therapy in a coordinated way to break yourself out of this stress, negative, depressed, anxious mode? Is that something that people can do?
I believe so, but it may take two colors being used simultaneously to cause this effect, which in the book Let There Be Light, there was one chapter called dual chrome, two colors. And it seems to work on the body, especially emotions, more strongly than just using any single color.
That's pretty neat. But
it needs more experimentation. There's no two ways about it.
Well, I think if you look at people who live in climates where there's not a lot of sunlight and there's more depression and they get, use light therapy there, it can break them out of, or help them function during those months where there's not a lot of sunlight. So it kind of makes sense from a medical standpoint. This would be right on point. But instead of this gross approach, it's a fine-tuned approach, and you can also tailor it to the individual. That's what I'm taking from what you're saying, which is everything that a doctor wants, is to be able to tailor it to your patient, titrate it.
Right now, some authorities are afraid with all these people locked up in their homes, so to speak. They call it cabin fever. And this is an ongoing thing for some people every winter. And about, 5, 6, 8 years ago, I saw a piece on TV. A doctor had devised, this was something he put on a person's hat, one of these baseball-type hats with the front peak. Mm-hmm. Just aimed two little flashlights, pen lights they used to call them. And you just went about your work with the lights on. And that cures, for many people, depression. Which, to my mind, I don't think it's the light. I think it's just the fact you think you're going to be helped by it. It's a mental state.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Mind is very powerful. You can talk yourself into being well. You can talk yourself into not being well, depending on how you frame it emotionally.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, Dr. George.
So from a therapeutic standpoint, did people have to go to a practitioner like yourself? Can you teach them how to do this themselves?
Again, it's a ridiculously simple thing, and that's part of the problem. It's too simple. Bulb in a box and theatrical gels. Nothing more.
So imagine it's always follow the money, isn't it? And when things help and they're cheap, that seems to be things that get wiped off as fast as possible. So then
that unfortunately is very true. If it doesn't cost a lot of money, it can't be very useful.
Isn't that sad? Our mindset in our society is that if it's not expensive, it's not worth it. And that's a sad thing. There's so much way if we can take our power back, if we get out of that mindset. And also that someone else is going to do it, or somebody else is going to take care of it. I think it really comes down to personal responsibility, and that's why I love having you on the show.
The trouble with socialism, that what we're experiencing, people do not want to take care of themselves. They expect the government to do everything.
Agreed. And I, from what I've experienced so far, that's not working very well for those folks who are still locked down and having their privacy seized and their freedom seized and their freedom to think and to speak taken away. I mean, this is a preview. Maybe people didn't know without it being implemented, because it's all theoretical, right? So you always want to think of the best. No one would have a bad intention. I think that's the natural human baseline. That people are good. But this is not the case. I mean, we're finding out that people have agendas and motives, and they'll do whatever they need to do to make it happen. Everybody, if you're grist for the mill, you're in the way, you're just going to be expendable. I don't think there's any other way to see that with how this is unfolded.
Okay, another tack. Have you heard of Dr. John Ott?
No.
Well, he was one of the pioneers helping Walt Disney do stop-motion photography. Disney approached him. I don't know what his qualifications were before why Disney did, but he did. Asked him to make a stop-motion picture of an apple from tree to blossom to pollination to growing to ripening to pecking. So he picked out a tree and set up his camera, and it's all automated, of course, so it takes one picture every 4 hours, 6 hours through the day, next day, all through the summer. Well, it got just so far, but he couldn't have it outdoors because the wind would shake and the whole thing would be a blurry mess. So he built a building around it, I take it, and glassed it all in. And the thing would not fruit properly because the glass cuts off too many UV and other radiation bits that the apple tree apparently needed. So, smart guy, he built it, took the roof off and made that movable. So it was always left open, except when the camera would click. Then it would be shut so the wind wouldn't shake the picture. That worked. Number two, he was once down at the shore and walking on the beach and dropped his glasses, and as luck would have it, he stepped on them, broke them. And the rest of the day, or until he could get another pair, he said he started feeling better and better. He wondered why. So he decided it was the glass itself. Glass does not allow for any real level of UV. He filters it out, changes it to heat probably. So he had plastic ones made, and they worked just fine optically and just worked fine as far as the UV. So he spent many years after that researching on light and health. In one office, he persuaded the people, the managers, that the fluorescent lighting was not of the best shade. He said, supposing we put in, instead of what you have, maybe it was warm white, he said, we'll put in this one, change the tint. They did. Cost a good bit of money to swap all the tubes out. And productive efficiency went up considerably. So many percent it was noticeable on their statistics. We said, well, that worked pretty well, but we might try another one, which is one shade more towards whatever. They swapped all the tubes out again, and again, up went efficiency. More production, more letters were typed per hour, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Last one, as a real scientist, he said, we will not tell anybody. They took all the tubes out and put back the original tubes. And what do you think? Production went up again. So there's mind over matter. The people thought they were being cared for, that this was more helpful for them, that the management cared.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual health benefits may well have been there, but the psychological benefit was immense. Mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story right there. And, I don't know if you've heard of, I think it's a nursing home or somebody I think it's Denmark, who did a study with senior citizens' homes. And you know how sometimes seniors can have a sundowning where they get agitated and combative, etc. And they just changed the lighting in their facility. and it was day and night. People were sleeping well. Their agitation stopped. They were on less medication. I mean, these are things that you can do that don't cost anything, but the benefit, I mean, imagine sleeping well, not needing to be drugged so that you might be overdosed and fall and break a hip. There's so many things that are positive if you can just lower the amount of medication that people are on and help them naturally thrive. On that note, let's take our last break. You're living in the solution.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and a host of other multimedia platforms. Subscribe and share it with your friends.
Welcome back to Living the Solution with Dr. Elaina George. We're speaking with Mr. Dinshah, and I wanted people to make sure that they know where's the best way they can reach your website, and let people know how the best way they can reach you.
Best way is read the material available on the website. Buy what you think will be appropriate. There's a $20 package consisting of Let There Be Light, the thorough layman's manual how to do this. Also has Dr. Baldwin's testimony in the back of it. How to make a simple lamp yourself out of a cardboard box, which sounds idiotic, to make a health machine out of a cardboard box, and so on. So it's the book, newsletters to the end of the year, and a 6-hour DVD I made many years ago. $20. Postpaid in the U.S.
I'm loving that cardboard box modality, right? I mean, everybody, there's no excuse then not to, if you are of the mind to get out there and do something. It's not going to cost you the mint. It's not going to be something that you can't do if you have...
One doctor's visit would probably cover the cost easily. We don't sell anything of that physical nature, only information. However, there are firms that do sell the filters and such, and there is a nice little theatrical lamp called a PAR-38. That's written in the book. And it takes 6.5-inch square filters. And since we can't sell them, we have arranged and matched theatrical gels, filters, for regular incandescent lamps. And since LEDs are now getting to be the point where they're taking over incandescence, 5,500 or 6,000 K, that's Kelvin, these filters are matched to use them because LEDs do not have the same wavelength balances as do the incandescents. So, any kind of bulb, but that's, again, the problem. A cardboard box, and you expect me to get healthy with a cardboard box? The simplicity is working against me. There's no two ways about it.
Well, I think there's probably a sea change coming where people are figuring out that it shouldn't cost you that much to stay healthy, and that if you basically don't get sick, that's the key, is prevention. And you mentioned something that I think we need to discuss briefly, and that's the difference in the light source. We went from incandescent to those crazy bulbs that needed a hazmat suit if you broke them, to now the LED is now becoming pretty popular. But as you just mentioned, and I think we need to reiterate.
Which were the lamps that you had a hazard with?
My gosh, I don't remember what the name of them are, but they were like a mercury base to them.
Oh, that's all incandescent. Oh, all fluorescence.
But this one was different. It was darker. It was basically a power saver, and it had a helical structure to it. I just can't...
Oh, the corkscrew lamps that they were promoting a couple of years back?
Exactly. Which
Those
were...
are just regular fluorescent bulbs with a different shape.
Oh, but I thought...
All fluorescence, in order to allow the electricity to jump from one end to the other, use mercury vapor. It has a drop or two of actual mercury, and it vaporizes, and that allows the spark to jump, which makes a whole lot of oddball emissions, including considerable UV. But the coating on the outside is what changes it, makes it warm white, daylight, whatever, and removes the UV. But all of them are dangerous.
Okay. And LED is not comparatively the same?
LEDs are 100% safe. They are not as good as far as healthful emissions as an incandescent because they don't have the infrared, which some people believe is very important to our mitochondria's health. But it's the best we have now.
So if you have LED, you definitely need to think about doing something with an adjunct with light therapy in order to put back what you're missing. Is that a way you should see?
Well, if you're going to put back what you're missing, you need a UV also.
Well, there's different UV light, isn't there? There's A, B, and C, and you don't want C.
Sunlight has all of it. It also has cosmic rays and I believe even X-rays, but most of this is filtered out by the atmosphere.
Okay. So all the sunscreen that we're putting on and have been basically frightened into thinking if we get out in the sun we're going to get skin cancer, that may have been...
Maybe those people are because of their very poor living habits.
It's almost like we harp on one thing without thinking of the big picture, and we end up taking 2 steps back with all these recommendations.
Well, if nothing else, Dr. Baldwin said she had cured skin cancer. There was also Dr. Niels Finsen in the early 1900s, and he was curing all kinds of skin problems, including cancer. Guess what? With UV. Doesn't make any sense. This is supposed to be the cause? No, he says I cured it. He won the Nobel Prize for medicine.
How do we get so far away from the science of things and to these pronouncements and regulations and rules from the medical establishment? It doesn't make a lot of sense, actually.
Well, common sense isn't so common. If it doesn't cost a lot, as you mentioned, people expect it to be much more expensive, has to be much more effective.
Wow. I'm really getting to the mindset if it costs more, maybe you ought to question it.
Well, there's a thing, the Biotron. It's a little handheld gizmo made overseas, and it comes in 3 models. The smallest one is like ours. It uses filters, although they claim it has polarized light, and I cannot imagine how polarized light is any better than light, the regular. And it costs over $600.
Oh, wow.
And if you want the better model, which then should be more effective, you would think, it's $1,500. Or was it $2,500? Whatever, it's a huge amount. And if you want the professional one mounted on the stand, it's $15,000.
Wow. As opposed to a cardboard box, huh?
It's a tremendous psychological value. And my father was in on that. He had a graduate model, stood 6 feet tall, had a 1,500 or 2,000 watt bulb in it. But it had the same colors. And since he had fixed this lady with the problem in India with a lantern, the 2,000 watt is totally unnecessary. If quantity were the key to getting well, there are people in Mexico, a couple of practitioners down there told me, places with no electricity. They would just put the color filters on the person out in broad daylight, even though it's very well, diluted by sunlight all around, and they were getting the results. But if sunlight were to be used, it must be 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 times more energetic than we're using a 40-watt bulb.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. There was Dr. Douglas, some 10 years ago. He was the editor of a blurb called Second Opinion, and he recommended Spectro-Chrome and even gave people a little square of each color and said use with a flashlight. And they did. And they were curing all kinds of things like diabetic ulcers and whatnot with a flashlight. So it's not the quantity, it is the quality.
Wow. So is there, I don't know if you know about infrared detoxing, like they have infrared spas now. Is that something that you think people should look into?
Dr. George, there is nothing that mankind can think of that does not have value for some people in some cases. Which ones? It takes an eclectic practitioner to decide, somebody knowledgeable in so many of these sciences, which one would be best for that person at that time. That's difficult. And there aren't any of them around.
Well, that's a really good point. Again, it's never a one-size-fits-all, whether it's a natural approach or a standard medical approach. I think that's where people get into trouble, too, where sometimes this is medicine. This is an art form, what you're describing, just as much as writing a prescription. And,
it is.
And you can't get cavalier, I don't believe, in any method that you choose to help your patient. You can never say, this is the only way to do it, and I know. It's just... It's not. It doesn't work that way. And I think patients need to be aware of that as well. And if they get into the mode of, if it's natural, then it can do no wrong and it can do no harm. And that's not necessarily true either.
Well, this I don't believe can cause harm.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it can make people quite uncomfortable as they begin. Because the typical case has so many things wrong with them. The body changes and they can get diarrhea, they can get a rash, they can get headaches, all kinds of things can happen as the reparative process is taking place.
It sounds almost like a detoxing event, what you're describing.
It would be, without a doubt.
Wow. So you have to get out the toxins, you have to get rid of the waste in order to start the reparative process.
Yep. That's why there is a protocol how to begin using the colors. Not just, well, I have a heart condition, I'll take this color, that's for the heart. It can be done. It will work to an extent. But something caused this problem in the first place. So if you don't get rid of the cause, you're only working on the effect. It has to come back. Like my heart arrhythmia. I haven't fixed the cause. I don't know what the cause is. But fortunately, I can easily get rid of the effect.
That's awesome.
I think so.
I mean, I'd rather see you on that than some of these other meds out there, which have, as we discussed in detail, benefits and risk. You have to weigh that. And
well, I've stayed away from as many drugs as I possibly can. Never taken an aspirin.
I think that's
I have tried an antibiotic after using color on a tooth, infected, and it fixed it, but it came back, and I said, well, let's try this miracle. Well, it worked to a point only, and after a couple of days, my throat froze. I could not swallow.
Wow.
And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it was caused by the antibiotic, a side effect. So that was the last time I'll ever try that, unless I really had something that I could not fix any other way.
I think you've given people a lot of things to think about. And we talked only about health, but I can imagine that light therapy and color therapy can be used to treat things like bacteria, things like viruses, things that are not helpful to the body in itself. I guess if the body's is healthy, then it actually will work against things that shouldn't be in there. That's how it's naturally designed, right?
That's the job of your spleen and your thymus. The spleen is also a repository like a Red Cross blood transfusion. It's a sponge. It holds, I don't know how many ounces of blood in case you have an injury. It's ready to give you a self-transfusion. It also works making macrophages, those are white blood cells that defend the body. But that's not the main one. The main one is the thymus gland. It makes several kinds of T cells, TD, TA, TB, whatever. However, you're born with a good-sized one. It grows with you up to adolescence, and then it starts to shrink. So if you have not been exposed to enough things in your early years, oh no, don't touch that, you'll get germs. Well, kids that live out in the country, out in the dirt and the animals and are exposed to so many more things are healthier in the long run. Maybe uncomfortable in the short run. So as you age, by the time you're 60, 70, the thymus is mostly gone. It's atrophied, and some is replaced with adipose fatty tissue. By the time you're my age, 92, it is certainly gone. So now I cannot defend myself nearly so well as I could when I was much younger, which I presume is why so many people die when they go to the hospital and exposed to so many other people's new problems. Mm-hmm. They cannot defend themselves.
And you've given us a lot of different ways to think about health and about what we need to put into our bodies and how we need to really be the controller of what we choose and how we choose to stay healthy. I know we have a few seconds left. I want to make sure people know how to reach you. What's the website that people should go to?
You can put the W's in front if you want. www.Dinshah Health, DINSHAH, and health, HEALTH.org. Nonprofit. We have no paid employees, just the two trustees doing the work.
I love that. And I'm going to be coming to the website so that I can become more adept at helping myself and my patients. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us today. I think we've been armed with an excellent ammunition so that we can have another alternative to helping ourselves and our family. So I want to thank you for joining me.
I thank you, Dr. George, for this opportunity, and I hope any number of people will take this opportunity to avail themselves of what is available to help yourself.
Agreed. That's how you win this situation, all of us. So I want to thank you again for coming and spending time with us, and I want to thank everybody for living in the solution.
Revolutionary talk for revolutionary times. Promoting peace, liberty, and prosperity around the clock. LibertyTalk.fm.